Welcome to the Stormsurf video surf forecast for the week starting Sunday, November 2nd. First up, let's take a quick look at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean, starting with Hurricane Vance, south of Baja, tracking west-northwest, forecast to make a turn more to the north and strengthen some. In the Gulf of Alaska, weak remnant seas from a low pressure that was over the Aleutians 2 days ago created small seas in the 24-foot range, created swell, which is pushing towards the California coast mainly for the midweek. But of most interest is Super Typhoon Nuri, currently with 155 knot winds south of Japan. We'll get into the details on that in a minute. Let's take a look at jet stream level winds. These are winds up about 30,000 feet that help support the formation of storms, and when those storms do form, help direct their paths. Right now, currently, we have a modestly healthy flow pushing off Japan, 140 knot winds, bit of a trough here inland over Asia, but for the most part it looks like it's ridging north up towards almost Kamchatka, then falling into a weak, I wouldn't even call it a trough because there's not enough wind associated with it to really do anything, but a little dip in the jet stream, and then another ridge here pushing into the U.S. West Coast. Nothing particularly supportive of gale development at the moment, but let's put this into motion, see how things evolve. So we get this big ridge kind of blowing up on Monday, pushing up into the Bering Sea, but notice a trough starting to develop in the Gulf of Alaska. That continues into Tuesday. Good, reasonably healthy winds here, 160 knot winds pushing into that trough, a bit pinched off, and then you got this sort of ridge continuing to support high pressure here, protecting the U.S. West Coast, but some possible weak low pressure development is going on here. And also notice off of the Kuril Islands, another pocket of 170 knot winds building. This is much more energetic than what has been in play for the past 2 weeks and is a good sign. We roll this out into Tuesday and notice the Gulf trough pretty much pinches off by Wednesday, but then look at this. You get this developing trough here in the Western Gulf on the date line, digging out very nicely, 170, 180 knot winds feeding it, definitely supportive of gale development here, pushing into the Gulf by Wednesday. That continues. Here we go, 190 knot winds. These are very strong winds. This should definitely support some sort of activity here in the Western Gulf, if one is to believe the models, by Thursday. That rolls out and that trough kind of pinches off, gets pretty deep, and that then pretty much support will drop off for gale development. But another pocket of 160 knot wind starts building by Friday over the date line. Sort of moderates some, but still another trough pushing into the Western Gulf by Sunday, and that rolls on out to 180 hours. So, two areas looking quite nice in the central Pacific towards the Gulf of Alaska over the coming week. And notice high pressure holds off the U.S. West Coast. This should sort of support a generally dry, relatively calm pattern here. Let's take a look down at the surface. Here we go. Surface level pressure. High pressure off the U.S. West Coast, 1028 millibars. And winds. Trades pushing into Hawaii, 15, almost 20 knots. Another high-pressure system here in the western north dateline type area. Weak low pressure, remnant low pressure, the Gulf of Alaska. Another little low right here. And, of course, Vance and Nuri, the big players at the moment. But also notice low pressure starting to wind up over the North Japan Sea and building 984 millibars. Let's put this into motion. This system continues to build, but it's basically landlocked west of the Kuril Islands. Continues trying to build. High pressure reigns supreme here in the U.S. West Coast. Not a whole lot going on. Roll that out. Then finally some fetch starts getting exposed off the Kuril Islands on Tuesday night into Wednesday. Not a whole lot, 30, 35 knot winds, but over a good size area. In the meanwhile, Nuri continues north, and we actually missed Vance over here, but there's Vance. Tiny little system, barely in the Southern California swell window. But look at this, 110 window, 110 degrees west is in not the Dana Point swell window, but up towards Point Doom and pushing right north there. Watch this. Well, actually, we'll roll back just a little bit. There you go. You can see the track. It's sort of out of the swell window here, but as it approaches 110, it's in the window on Monday, and then it falls apart and moves inland. No big deal. this is the system to watch. Nuri here, very strong. But anyway, we're up here. We're watching the storm, so where we are, we're on Wednesday. That sort of fades, but continues to push a broad area of 30 to 35 knot winds. That's good for about 13-second period swell, maybe a little bit more. Notice Nuri tracking well to the north here. And this system fades, Nuri starts exploding. 50 knot winds, 55, maybe 60 knot winds here by Friday, racing over the date line. Fetch barely south of the Aleutians. That's a 60 knot fetch there, aimed towards the U.S. West Coast and absolutely towards Hawaii too. The core of the storm, though, then moves into the Gulf of Alaska. Fetch moves north of the Aleutians and things sort of fade out. Still good 35 to 40 knot fetch south of the Aleutians, and that sort of fades. But notice another system 174 hours out starts moving off of the Kuril Islands and starts to build. So this system is not dead yet. And notice just pretty much a dead wind pattern here off the U.S. West Coast. Also, the models hint at some tropical activity here southeast of Hawaii, but that's not believable at all. Weak low pressure pretty much reigns supreme between the North Pacific and the Hawaiian Islands. Let's go take a look down at the surface. Okay, significant wave heights, North Pacific Ocean. We're going back in time, actually Thursday, 18Z. This system, we don't care about. Swell from it, basically wind swell. These are 20-foot seas that resulted in about a 13-second period swell that hit California on Saturday and Southern California into Sunday. It is this little system here, just south of the Aleutians at the intersection of it and the dateline that we're watching. And into Friday, what was that, 26-foot seas aimed barely. Notice the great circle path here. You get a storm tucked up in here, it's cut off by the Aleutians, will not make it into Northern California. 309 degrees, about the cutoff there. But this system was not in that situation, and it continued east, continued gurgling along, was at about 23-foot seas Saturday, and then faded out by Sunday. But that's good for a good pulse of maybe 14-second period swell into Northern California, and probably some small sideband energy into Hawaii. Nothing major, just something good midweek to produce some rideable waves. And then we start rolling this out. Keep your eyes on Nuri here. Notice, actually, 12 hours out, this is Sunday night. It is on the 292, 293, let's say, Great Circle path to Northern California. That's still 5,300 nautical miles away. If it were a 17-second period swell, it would take about 8.4 days to reach the U.S. West Coast, so probably not a whole lot to result from that. But let's roll this out and see what happens. First off, remember this gale that was forecast on Tuesday, all tucked up here behind the Kuril Islands for the most part, but then it starts getting some exposure. We saw the fetch, 35 knot fetch, and what is that, 20, 22, 24, 26-foot seas, again, pretty well to the north. That's about the 304, 305 degree path into Northern California. Better to Hawaii on about the 315 degree path or so. Roll it out and continues. For the most part, the energy this is not a huge system, not high seas, 25-foot seas, again aimed reasonably well towards Hawaii on about, hard to say, about 318 degree path or so, 320 degree, and then it sort of tries to reorganize by Thursday on the dateline, south of the dateline, and another batch of 20, 22, 25-foot seas relative to Hawaii, 338 degree path, not bad, pushing reasonably well, but also getting some exposure into Northern California here too on about the 296, 295 degree path. Roll that out, but actually notice it's pushing south more than it's pushing east, so that probably favors Hawaii. In fact, let's take one quick look back at just that little sequence. Here we go. Starting here, this is on Wednesday night, falling southeast into Friday. Not bad, and right behind it, here comes Nuri. Extratropical is the assumption, building 41-foot seas, and holding 42 or 3-foot seas here just south of the Aleutians. So relative to Hawaii, notice The swell angle, the arrows here, are all pushing pretty much almost perpendicular to the tracks into Hawaii. So relative to Hawaii, if this were to form, the best opportunity for swell to be generated for Hawaii would be right in about here, when before it gets too far north of the islands, in about the 320, 325 degree range. The interesting part here relative to Northern California, though, is notice this. Even when it's next to nothing here on Thursday, it's just pushing right up the 302, 304 degree path and just continues chugging along 40-foot, 38-foot seas into Sunday. If this happens, it looks like long period swell will result for just about all the U.S. West Coast, favoring pretty much places north of Point Conception, though. Roll this out, that system fades out, whoops, but then we notice seas starting to be generated from the reincarnation of this storm, again west of the date line. This is over a week out, not believable, but look at this, 18-foot seas just covering a huge footprint by this time. Guaranteed, if this happens, swell, decent sized swell for the entire east side of the North Pacific would be expected. All right, let's keep going. We're going to do a quick examination of Nuri here because it is so strong. Even at this point in time, it has 155 knot winds. Here we are, south of Hawaii. This is as of Sunday, 18Z. 155 knot winds, gust to 190, 48-foot seas, and these are aimed somewhat up the Great Circle Path to Northern California, more so there than even Hawaii. The really interesting part, and seeing how it's only 12 hours out, 170 knot winds projected. That'd be right here and starting to turn northeast. Okay, 170 knot winds, that's 196 miles an hour. This is a very strong storm. Something, it's in the middle of open ocean, which is good, but indicative of, one, warm water in this area, and two, certainly no inactive phase of the MJO. If anything, a weak active phase or a neutral phase going on. Tropical activity is again starting to make its presence known in the West Pacific. This is a good sign. This suggests that over the next coming weeks, we're moving into at least a neutral, if not an active phase, weakly active phase of the MJO. The recurving tropical system pattern that is so favorable to California and Hawaii during these sort of Modoki and during El Nino sort of years, clearly in play. The model's projecting it. We have no expectation that it will not recurve. And though the strength is extremely high here, by the time it gets over and starts making the recurvature, we're down to 45 knot winds per this projection. So that's not so much a big deal, but still, in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, once you get a storm this strong, it doesn't die off just overnight. It keeps momentum going and keeps producing. The expectation is it'll go extratropical, and as you saw, create some solid long period swell if everything goes as expected. So this is a noteworthy storm, probably the strongest storm of the season for the North Pacific, so we wanted to give it a little bit of a highlight. And yet, one more image from Super Typhoon Nuri, infrared satellite image as of 0Z, that and also 1Z, two different images sort of overlaid, well-formed eye wall. Look at the area around the eye. Very intense storm. Most impressive. Something worth saving in the archives here. A good, solid storm. All right, let's go take a look at long-term indicators. What's going on over the next weeks and months to come. Southern Oscillation Index. Difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia and Tahiti. Starting to dip negative again. Minus 2.99 for the daily numbers. The better indicator here, 30-day running average, minus 8.06, clearly indicative of at least the active phase of the MJO, and the 90-day running average, every bit as deep, minus 8.20, again indicative of a prolonged active phase of the MJO, not particularly strong, but not weak either, certainly not in La Nina territory. You would not see this if any form of La Nina were in play, so just more indications that we are working our way slowly into some sort of, probably a Modoki, weak El Nino sort of situation. Here's a quick look. 30-day running SOI average, over multiple years. Again, as we've talked before, there was a little hint of something that almost looked like El Nino back in July 2012, but then we were, bam, right back into positive numbers, La Nina, until about February of 2014. The SOI dropped, the bottom fell out. It tried to rebound a little bit and almost give up the ghost, but here we go. Now, from July on, we've been in negative numbers. Here we are right now. We had that little blip there is the inactive phase of the MJO, but the assumption is we're starting to move back into an active phase and expect to see dropping numbers for the week ahead. And those negative numbers are being generated by low pressure. Here we go, surface level. So Tahiti's right about here. 18 north and about 149 west, so right there, that little dot. Low pressure here. Watch this over the coming week. It starts developing, just holding south of Tahiti. That should continue to drop the SOI. And there we go, actually more rain, more wind, more supportive, more low pressure right over Tahiti, and we're 84 hours out, and then it rolls out, and then high pressure starts getting more of a footprint by the weekend. But so the thought is negative numbers for the balance of the week. That will continue to push the 30-day average down, or at least hold it where it is, and continue the 90-day average in about the -8 to 9 range. Next, we take a look at surface level wind anomalies. These are wind differences than normal for this time of year. Notice easterly anomalies. One would normally associate that with the inactive phase of the MJO, but the thought being really that's just sort of a backflow, a flow into Nuri here because it's so strong. It's just it's a big hole basically, just sucking air into the upper atmosphere, and so you get some sort of a backfill to try to fill that void. We do not believe that this is in any way associated with an inactive phase of the MJO. Here's Australia here, and the Philippines are over here. Let's go take a look at the East Pacific. Again, light westerly anomalies working their way over the dateline and then dead neutral from there. And of course, here is Vance. Looking a week out, neutral anomalies forecast again. Notice westerly anomalies here up at 10 north, but that's not really where it matters. It's a couple of degrees either side of the equator, and pretty much from 140 east you draw a box right in here. That's the Kelvin wave generation area. That's where we want to see westerly anomalies. And then you go and you look a week out in the East Pacific. Westerly anomalies continuing in the far West Pacific, East Pacific, but that doesn't do anything for Kelvin wave generation. It's just sort of an aberration, if you will. No easterly anomalies really indicated is what this suggests. Next, we take a look at the statistical model. This is outgoing long wave radiation. Yellows are suggestive of high pressure at the ocean surface, more ocean reflectivity, and the blues are the active phase of the MJO, less reflectivity, more clouds, and suggestive of westerly anomalies. So the statistical model shows basically dead, neutral pattern for the next 2 weeks. That's 15 days. The interesting part is the GEFS model, that's basically the ensemble GFS or dynamic model, suggests the inactive phase building in. It will be interesting to see what really happens, but we suspect this is probably not going to happen because it hasn't happened yet this entire year. Next, we take a look at the upper level, jet stream level forecast. The greens are the areas supportive of precipitation, the yellows unsupportive of precipitation. At this point in time, of course, that is Nuri, but for the most part over the equatorial, right there, equatorial Pacific, kind of a neutral pattern, nothing really going on, sort of a more green, so that would be suggestive of the active phase of the MJO. And you notice over time here, that pattern sort of slowly works its way east, but it's not even cohesive enough to call it a active phase of the MJO. And then you're into the end of November, and I guess one could almost say you could draw a line through that over time and say, well, that's the inactive phase, but it's so weak and so incohesive that probably dead neutral is what it looks like. And the reality is that's what's been going on. We get these little pulses this year, just like right where we are now. We're in the middle of sort of a weak inactive pulse, but that's like all but gone now. and we're moving towards an active pulse. So we've had 2 weeks where the Pacific kind of quieted down a bit. We expect it to start waking up. Clearly the models show that, and the MJO is effectively all but gone. Here's another way to look at surface level wind anomalies. This is actual wind speeds, actual water temperatures. Here's the anomalies. Notice dead neutral here. This is the East Pacific. This is the West Pacific. Kelvin wave generation would be draw a box right in about here. And notice it's just kind of a mixed bag. Not a whole lot going on. Water temperatures looking pretty good. 1+ degrees above normal. Half a degree above normal in the East Pacific. And just about neutral over this one little spot here between about 170 and 140. Which happens to be the Nino 3.4 region, but we'll get into more discussion here in a second about water temperatures. Surface level ocean water temperature anomalies. Differences from normal. Yellows, reds are hotter than normal. Blues, less than normal. The area that we want to monitor for El Nino development is 120 and just a couple of degrees either side of that to 170 west. So draw a box right there. And clearly, there is warmer than normal water temperatures there. Much warmer east of that area. That's the result of a new Kelvin wave, the first of 2 erupting along the Galapagos. This has been pretty consistent. Actually, these 2 little dots here have built in the past week. And also, this area here of cooler water, which has been in play all year, used to be go the whole way out to here as of just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, is steadily eroding, being backfilled by warmer, just slightly than warmer normal water, but warm enough. This is not enough to be declared an El Nino yet. You would see a very strong reddish signal here if that were the case. But still, this is why we keep talking about this thing called a Modoki El Nino. An El Nino, but not really, and that's pretty much what's going on. Warming in this area feeds the jet stream, and when the jet stream gets fed, it also starts when the jet stream, and it causes the jet stream to fall south. That starts picking up tropical activity in the West Pacific, recurving it towards the U.S. West Coast, making extratropical storms and swell for Hawaii, U.S. West Coast in the fall months. That's exactly what's been going on. In fact, even since late June and July, we saw evidence of that. There was no swell, but you could already see low pressure systems working their way across this path to the north. It just continues to happen. Nuri will be just yet another example of that, maybe the strongest example so far this season. But anyway, the whole point being, this is way different than what we've seen for the past 4 years. This is what we consider normal, good, big wave surf sort of setup. Not huge, but just consistent, nice machine going. This is what most seasoned surfers and ocean people that are familiar with the North Pacific during good years, this is a classic, just a good setup. Not over the top, but right where you want to be, sort of the sweet spot. Next, subsurface temperature anomalies. The really important part. These are actual water temperatures. Notice the X's. Those are buoys that are strung across the Pacific Ocean on the equator. The entire TAO array is for the most part up and running now. Good data being produced. Here is the anomalies. This is what we're really interested in. As of just a week ago, 1 Kelvin wave, that is warmer than normal water, a pocket of it, was moving into the Galapagos, created by westerly winds on the surface in the West Pacific. That is westerly anomalies. Here is another Kelvin wave, strongest one now of the 2. 4-degree anomalies set up, and it is moving. Let's see, here we go. Let's get some numbers. It's at 160 west. Last week it was at 170 west. So it's making its way east. It takes about 3 months to do the whole circuit, and we're about a month into that right now. So yet more warm water is expected to start gurgling up off the Galapagos and then work its way into the Nino 3.4 region, which actually, this is an interesting little chart, which is actually right here. Notice the cooler subsurface temperatures, not cold by any stretch of the imagination, but just half a degree above normal. This is the real corridor here. And anyway, so another Kelvin wave in flight. That is good news. That's exactly what we want to see. So that will pretty much guarantee us warm water if we're in early November now, another 2 months before it makes it here. So that's warm water into January, and then we're in the heart of the season. There is no real indication that this Modoki El Nino sort of setup is like going to dissipate anytime this winter. We're actually in a great place. It looks like, I don't want to say that it's in the bag, but we're in a good position to have decent conditions for the bulk of the winter given what we see at this point in time. Here's another view of the subsurface flow, different model, but again, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, about 3-degree anomalies, and then notice this one has more warm water off in here, but this is as of the 25th of October. So this was the first Kelvin wave moving in about a week ago, and here's the second Kelvin wave. Notice also this is they call it a downwelling Kelvin wave because the warm water actually falls south, or at depth, I'm sorry, down about 150 meters, and then works its way east into the Galapagos. So downwelling, and then when you get upwelling, it's cold water working its way up to the surface. No indication of any upwelling at all going on. And here's the historical view, and we've shown this several weeks, so we won't get into too much, but one Kelvin wave, one blast of warm water, upper ocean heat anomalies back October of last year, the big one in January, February, March working its way east, the upwelling phase of the Kelvin waves in between. Here's the first little Kelvin wave that we talked about that's currently hitting the Galapagos right now, and here's the next one building and clearly starting to work its way east to about 145 west as of October 25th. We think it's further along than that now. And satellite data. This is sea surface height anomalies difference from normal. You take all the tides out, you take any of the waves and all that out and just say how high is the ocean surface from normal, and you see that there's clearly this whole area here is slightly higher, just 0 to 5 centimeters above normal. But that's indicative of warm water at the surface. The pipe's wide open, warm water flowing through it. More building back under the dateline in the Kelvin wave generation. More westerly anomalies is what we want to see to set up perhaps yet another Kelvin wave. But none of that is apparent at this point in time. Still, there's plenty of warm water in the pipe, so nothing to be concerned about. And finally, the CFS V2 model forecast sea surface temperature anomalies for the Nino 3.4 region. Here we are right about here as of now. We're in November. Water temperatures per the model are about 0.65 above normal. There's actually some suggestion of it settling down a little bit, but never getting below half a degree above normal into January. And when we say things were in the bag, well, the model sort of suggests that too, that we just continue gurgling along about a half a degree above normal. Maybe enough for someone to declare an El Nino, but you wouldn't have to. Modoki El Nino would be fair. The really interesting part is come the spring, normally if there was any kind of an El Nino, it would start dropping off by then. But no, the model says, if anything, temperatures are going to go up to about 1.45 degrees by July. That sets you up, if that is in fact the case, that sets you up. You would assume temperatures would climb up from there into the following year. So it sort of looks like, at least per the model, that we're working our way into a multi-year event. And typically with these Modoki El Ninos, that's exactly what they do. You get a year, 2, 3, maybe even 4 years where things kind of gurgle along warmer than normal, and then you get some sort of a larger event that follows it. When we talk about these multi-year El Nino events, you can see some actually in history. 1975, notice a multi-year, not particularly high, and the reds, I'm sorry, are warmer. This is the ENSO index, but generally indicates warmer than normal water temperatures, ultimately culminating in a big El Nino in '86. Then you had another sort of this prolonged, even warmer than that, multi-year from 1990 into 95, 96, and then another big one in the 97-98 El Nino, and yet another one here in about 2003 that continued through 2006, 2007, and then ultimately with a real El Nino in 2009, 2010. And then here's the false start El Nino in 2012, and here's where we are now. What we are hoping is that we get into a run that sort of looks like that or that, but hard to say. It's just wild speculation to suggest that that would even be the case, but that's what the hope is. So we'll see. But for now, things are looking quite good. Small system evolved over the eastern Aleutian Islands over Friday, Saturday. Swell is working its way towards Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast, just sort of small in nature. Then we have another system scheduled off Kamchatka. That'll be coming in, and yet Super Typhoon Nuri is expected to recurve, go extratropical on the date line, creating yet more larger, longer period swell. And of course, there's Vance pushing towards Southern California, maybe a little pulse of swell to result from that. And of course, the Modoki El Nino thing just continues to roll right along. So things are looking very good. A good, favorable forecast for the months ahead. Anyway, that's it for this week. Hope you've enjoyed the forecast. We'll do it again next week. Same time, same channel. In the meantime, go get some surf. Have a great day. See you next week.